The airport terminal buzzed with relentless energy, a kaleidoscope of hurried travelers, rolling suitcases, and announcements echoing through the cavernous space. The fluorescent lights reflected off the polished floors, casting a sterile glow over the sea of strangers, each seemingly on their own urgent mission. Amid the chaos, Olivia Harper moved with practiced efficiency, her notebook tucked under one arm, laptop bag slung across her shoulder. Her eyes, usually bright with curiosity and sharp wit, were slightly shadowed, betraying the fatigue that clung to her after months of relentless travel, deadlines, and emotional strain. She'd been chasing stories across continents, immersing herself in other people's lives while her own seemed suspended in limbo. Her latest assignment, a deep dive into sustainable tourism, had left her exhilarated and exhausted in equal measure. As she navigated the crowds, she barely registered the rhythmic clatter of carts or the hum of engines from the distant runway. She paused briefly to grab a coffee, the rich aroma offering a fleeting moment of comfort. Her hand trembled slightly as she reached for the cup, betraying a mix of nerves and lingering frustration from a recent breakup. A relationship that had promised stability had collapsed spectacularly, leaving her trust frayed and her heart cautious. Even in public spaces, she felt exposed, wary of intrusion yet craving connection, her vulnerability hidden beneath her composed exterior. Each step toward her gate was measured, deliberate, yet her mind wandered to the personal void she was still attempting to fill, a subtle tension that made her movements both graceful and taut with suppressed emotion. Ethan Cole, by contrast, moved through the terminal like a man accustomed to control, each stride precise, his posture rigid as though it could shield him from the unpredictability of life. At 34, he had mastered the art of compartmentalization, his corporate law career demanding long hours, razor-sharp focus, and an emotional detachment honed over years of personal betrayals and professional gambits. Today was different. He was on a rare vacation, a brief reprieve from his meticulously structured existence, yet the shadow of his responsibilities loomed over him. His leather briefcase, bulging with legal documents, represented not just work, but a lingering, gnawing stress he was desperate to set aside, yet couldn't fully escape. As he reviewed a final contract while maneuvering through the crowd, his eyes scanned paragraphs with the intensity of a man preparing for battle, oblivious to the human motion around him. Every once in a while, he clenched his jaw, a subtle display of the frustration simmering beneath the surface. Ethan prided himself on precision, control, and foresight, traits that had saved him professionally but left him personally isolated. In the maze of terminal chaos, he remained a figure of calculated calm, yet an invisible tension crackled around him, the kind born of unspoken pressures and an ingrained habit of self-protection. He was ready to escape into a temporary world of leisure, but life, as it often did, had other plans. The collision of schedules, personalities, and sheer chance was imminent, a spark waiting to ignite, and Ethan, despite his guarded nature, was about to encounter something entirely unexpected. The moment crystallized in an instant, a jolt of caffeine-laden chaos. Olivia, distracted by a fleeting thought about her latest article, misjudged her step while navigating a congested section of the terminal. Her hand tipped the coffee cup just as Ethan's briefcase swung by, sending dark liquid cascading across meticulously stacked documents. Time seemed to stretch. Olivia's heart sank, her instincts screaming apology as Ethan's eyes shot up, a mix of disbelief and irritation flashing across his face. Words collided with urgency, her apologies tumbling over themselves, his curt retorts laced with frustration. There was a sharp, electric tension between them, a friction that neither could fully mask. Olivia's voice, tinged with genuine remorse, cracked slightly as she offered a second, more heartfelt apology, her vulnerability seeping through the carefully curated layers of confidence. Ethan's response was a guarded blend of sarcasm and controlled exasperation, a shield against a flicker of interest he didn't want to acknowledge. Beneath the surface irritation, something unspoken lingered, an intangible connection neither could ignore. For Olivia, the encounter was a collision of her chaotic external life with an internal longing for validation and recognition. For Ethan, it was a challenge to his meticulous equilibrium, an intrusion that stirred curiosity he had long suppressed. In that brief, messy moment, both recognized a mirror of their hidden vulnerabilities, her weariness from shattered trust, his hesitation born from past betrayals. What began as a minor accident became the seed of an unexpected narrative where irritation, attraction, and unspoken understanding intertwined in the crowded hum of an airport that suddenly felt charged with possibility. Olivia Harper's childhood was a delicate tapestry of resilience and quiet anxiety, stitched together under the uneven guidance of her single mother. Her mother, though loving in moments of clarity, struggled with bouts of instability, financial, emotional, and at times even mental. Olivia learned early to be self-sufficient, cultivating a sharp intellect and an ability to adapt quickly, traits that would later serve her in the competitive world of journalism. Yet, this formative environment left her with a latent skepticism about stability and trust. Her first serious engagement had seemed like a beacon of hope, a chance to rewrite the narrative of love she had always watched from the sidelines. That hope shattered when she discovered her fiancé's infidelity, leaving a deep scar that reframed her approach to relationships. Since then, Olivia's heart had been cautiously armored. She could navigate the complexities of human emotion for her stories, but opening herself up to someone felt perilous. Professionally, she excelled, her career as a travel journalist offering both validation and escape. She thrived on the thrill of exploring new cultures and experiences, yet the very freedom that energized her also magnified her loneliness. Immersed in the lives of others, she often felt the absence of a genuine connection for herself. Now, embarking on an assignment to write an immersive travel feature in a remote coastal town, Olivia carried a mix of anticipation and trepidation. Curious for adventure, but subconsciously bracing for the emotional solitude that had become her default state. Ethan Cole's life had been molded under the rigid, high-pressure expectations of a family that prized achievement over emotional intimacy. His father, a man of exacting standards, rarely offered praise, teaching Ethan early that worth had to be earned through discipline and results, not affection. This upbringing fostered an unwavering drive to succeed professionally, yet it simultaneously seeded an emotional reticence that permeated his personal life. Ethan's romantic past had mirrored this professional caution. A meaningful relationship, one he had trusted implicitly, ended in betrayal, both emotionally and professionally, by someone he had considered a confidant. The wounds from that experience became a template for how he navigated trust thereafter. Cautiously, analytically, and often with walls firmly in place. Beneath the meticulously composed exterior, however, lingered a profound longing for genuine connection and a respite from the relentless pressures of work and expectation. The rare vacation he now reluctantly undertook was not merely leisure. It was an attempt to reclaim fragments of himself buried under contracts, legal battles, and social facades. Traveling to a remote coastal town promised an escape from routine, deadlines, and the suffocating weight of perpetual vigilance. Yet, as structured and controlled as his life appeared, Ethan's emotional interior remained volatile, a mixture of yearning, guarded curiosity, and the subtle fear that opening up could result in another betrayal. The stage was set, a man accustomed to controlling circumstances, meeting a woman wary of trusting, both converging toward the same uncertain horizon. Fate, it seemed, had conspired to align Olivia and Ethan's paths in the same remote coastal town, each driven by disparate motivations yet united by an unspoken desire to reclaim balance in their lives. Olivia approached her assignment with professional fervor, eager to capture the essence of local culture, landscapes, and hidden stories that would elevate her career. Her notebooks were already brimming with ideas, her mind oscillating between observation and reflection, yet underneath the focus lay a quiet yearning for connection beyond the lens of her camera. Ethan, on the other hand, approached the trip with reluctant intention, his purpose more personal than professional, a chance to step back from a life dictated by obligations and betrayals, even if only temporarily. Their initial encounter, seemingly coincidental, was charged with the weight of their individual histories, the defenses Olivia carried against love and the walls Ethan built against vulnerability. Both were drawn to the possibility of human connection, yet both instinctively guarded their hearts. This emotional layer, the simultaneous longing and hesitation, set the stage for a slow-burning romance, where trust would not come easily and attraction would be interwoven with self-discovery. Their journey to the coastal town would not just be a physical voyage, but a parallel exploration of their emotional landscapes, where shared experiences, conflicts, and fleeting moments of intimacy would gradually chip away at years of skepticism and guardedness, creating a narrative rich with tension, vulnerability, and the promise of transformation. The scenic train's whistle pierced the crisp morning air, signaling the start of a long-distance journey that promised breathtaking coastal views and hours of introspection for its passengers. Olivia Harper, suitcase in tow, felt a flutter of anticipation. Her assignment, to document the landscapes and cultures of the region, made the train ride an ideal canvas for both observation and reflection. She had imagined the journey as a quiet, solitary opportunity to immerse herself in her writing, sketching notes, and capturing fleeting moments from the comfort of her window seat. Across the platform, Ethan Cole adjusted the strap of his leather briefcase, the edges of his tailored coat brushing against the bustle of travelers. Though he rarely indulged in extended travel for leisure, the scenic train offered a rare pause from his relentless professional grind. Both were aware of the journey's appeal, yet neither could have anticipated the collision of circumstance that awaited. The boarding process was orderly, the train gleaming under the morning sun. But small whispers of disruption, engine checks, delayed cargo, shifting schedules, hinted at a disruption that would soon spiral beyond minor inconvenience. Olivia tucked her notebook under her arm, scanning the compartments for a private seat, while Ethan mentally prepared to detach, burying himself in reports on his tablet. Neither had anticipated the twist of fate that would force them into shared proximity, setting in motion a sequence of encounters that would challenge the personal walls each had meticulously constructed. The stage was set, the calm before the storm, with a rhythmic click of the train promising both scenic beauty and unanticipated emotional turbulence. Midway through the boarding process, a terse announcement crackled over the intercom. A technical delay had stranded the train for several hours. The murmurs of frustration swelled into a low hum of anxiety as passengers shuffled through narrow aisles, clutching luggage and weary expressions. Olivia, accustomed to unpredictable travel, took a deep breath, attempting to maintain composure as she scanned available seating. Fate intervened when she was directed to share a cabin with a stranger, Ethan Cole, whose sharp eyes and contained posture immediately signaled the presence of a man used to control. The confined space of the cabin heightened every movement, every gesture amplified by close quarters. Small talk began awkwardly, Olivia offering tentative questions about the journey, Ethan responding with clipped, polite detachment. The air between them crackled with tension. Her inquisitiveness met his sarcasm. Her warmth met his guardedness. With each exchange, the subtle friction of clashing personalities grew, the forced proximity revealing both irritation and an inexplicable curiosity. Olivia, normally composed in professional settings, found herself laughing nervously at minor mishaps, while Ethan struggled to maintain his emotional armor, occasionally caught off guard by her sincerity. The delay, which initially felt like a minor annoyance, transformed into a crucible for human interaction, forcing two independent lives into a shared, intimate space that neither could retreat from. The train's stalled rhythm mirrored the growing emotional tempo between them, setting the stage for both conflict and an unspoken connection. As the hours stretched on, the conversation, or lack thereof, between Olivia and Ethan became a mirror of their personal vulnerabilities. In a rare, unguarded moment, Olivia confided details of her recent heartbreak, her voice tinged with quiet regret and lingering skepticism about trust and love. Her openness was startling in its authenticity, and for a brief moment, Ethan's carefully maintained detachment faltered. He listened intently, curiosity piqued by the raw honesty she offered without pretense. Yet he maintained his measured responses, careful not to reveal the cracks in his own armor, aware that emotional engagement carried risks he was unaccustomed to accepting. The cabin, once merely a physical space, transformed into an emotional crucible where walls were tested, vulnerabilities glimpsed, and the intricate dance of attraction and irritation began to unfold. Neither could escape the journey now. The delay and shared circumstances bound them together, creating a dynamic where personal growth and relational tension became inevitable. By the time the train's engine roared back to life, both Olivia and Ethan had experienced a subtle shift. Their perceptions of each other, initial annoyance, guarded curiosity, and burgeoning intrigue, laid the groundwork for the unfolding story. The inciting incident had succeeded. The narrative was in motion, romantic tension intertwined with the personal challenges that would define the arc of their journey, promising a slow-burning romance set against the backdrop of scenic vistas and the intimate confinement of shared circumstance. The scenic coastal train journey continued, each day presenting a new set of unpredictable challenges that gradually drew Olivia and Ethan closer despite their initial friction. Delays forced them to linger in quaint stations, awkwardly sharing benches as travelers passed by, exchanging fleeting smiles and reluctant jokes. Olivia's natural curiosity led her to explore hidden nooks near the tracks, and Ethan, despite himself, found satisfaction in following her, noting how she observed details he had always overlooked. Sightseeing mishaps, missed connecting shuttles, a sudden rainstorm forcing them to share a drenched bench, a misread map, created moments of camaraderie that slowly eroded the walls both had built. With each small shared struggle, Olivia's laughter became more natural, less performative, while Ethan's sharp wit softened into subtle teasing, revealing hints of humor and warmth he usually reserved for solitude. These encounters, while seemingly mundane, carried emotional significance. Each smile, gentle nudge, or shared frustration became a thread, weaving them into an unspoken partnership. They began to recognize the same restlessness in each other, a hunger for escape, for genuine connection, for a life that balanced ambition with emotional fulfillment. By the time the train cut through cliffs and beaches in golden evening light, the moments of camaraderie had created a delicate foundation of trust, curiosity, and mutual intrigue, setting the stage for deeper revelations about themselves. The journey, intended as a professional assignment for Olivia and a respite for Ethan, was gradually transforming into a crucible for introspection and tentative emotional connection. Yet the proximity that allowed connection also magnified friction. Minor misunderstandings escalated into more pronounced tension, with small gestures misread and unspoken assumptions festering. Olivia would glance at a fellow traveler laughing at a shared joke, only to notice Ethan's guarded expression, interpreting his distraction as jealousy rather than fatigue. Ethan, in turn, noticed Olivia responding warmly to another passenger's friendly commentary and bristled, his insecurities from past betrayals sparking quiet resentment. Missed messages about schedule changes or updates from their respective professional lives added to the strain. Olivia's editor demanding rapid progress on her travel feature, and Ethan receiving urgent emails he had no intention of immediately addressing. The tension peaked during a heated evening in the cabin after a rain-soaked sightseeing detour. Words were exchanged sharply, revealing fears they had carefully hidden. Olivia confessed her mistrust and lingering heartbreak, while Ethan admitted his fear of vulnerability stemming from professional and personal betrayals. The confrontation was cathartic yet uncomfortable, peeling away layers of self-protection exposing raw nerves beneath the humor and sarcasm they had previously relied upon. Both recognized that emotional closeness carried risk, and that the fragile bond forming between them could be easily fractured by the walls they had meticulously maintained for years. The emotional stakes of their growing connection became painfully clear. Each glance and lingering touch carried the possibility of attraction and the risk of disappointment. Olivia found herself thinking about Ethan outside of shared moments, the journalistic mask she was softening as personal curiosity edged into genuine care. Ethan, equally surprised by his own reactions, noted how her vulnerability stirred a protective instinct he rarely allowed himself to feel. Simultaneously, external pressures threatened their nascent bond. Olivia's editor was relentless, sending emails and reminders that tempted her to abandon the journey mid-course, while Ethan's phone buzzed with client demands, testing his resolve to maintain a vacation boundary. The tension between personal obligation and emergent desire created an emotional push-pull, forcing them to question what they truly wanted: a safe retreat into solitude or a precarious step toward connection. Every minor setback, from missed train stops to scheduling conflicts, heightened the intensity of their interactions. Through arguments, teasing, and shared frustrations, they confronted not just each other, but their own inner barriers, Olivia's skepticism and Ethan's guarded heart. By the time the train snaked along a cliffside vista at sunset, their relationship had evolved from irritation to reluctant companionship, fraught with unspoken longing, subtle jealousy, and the promise of intimacy if only they could overcome the protective walls built from past betrayals and heartbreaks. The coastal town was enveloped in a sudden tempest, gray clouds rolling in with an ominous intensity that mirrored the tension simmering between Olivia and Ethan. The wind whipped against the cliffs where Olivia had positioned herself, camera in hand, determined to capture the storm's raw beauty. Her heart raced with exhilaration and apprehension. The jagged rocks and churning waves below were both awe-inspiring and dangerous. The spray of the ocean stung her face as she adjusted her footing, eyes fixed on the perfect shot. In a single, terrifying instant, a loose stone shifted beneath her boot. Olivia lost her balance, teetering perilously on the edge before plunging toward the frigid water below. Time seemed to slow as her scream echoed over the roaring wind, the camera tumbling beside her. Panic surged through her as the cold engulfed her, shock numbing her movements, the world a blur of gray waves and sky. Her mind spun, not with fear of death, but with an acute, visceral awareness of everything she had kept tightly controlled: her emotions, her trust, her guarded heart. She had been chasing the perfect story, the perfect image, yet in a moment of vulnerability, all pretenses dissolved. Every instinct screamed for survival, and somewhere between terror and desperation, she realized she was utterly, unavoidably exposed. It was then that Ethan, who had been nearby observing the gathering storm with his typical controlled detachment, reacted in a way that neither of them could have predicted. Ethan's calm, analytical exterior shattered as adrenaline surged through him. Without a second thought, he leapt toward the edge, hands gripping slippery rocks as he navigated the treacherous terrain. The storm battered him. Wind tore at his coat, rain lashed against his face, and the roar of the ocean threatened to drown out his senses. But his focus was singular: reach Olivia before the water claimed her. As he plunged into the waves, grabbing her wrist and pulling her toward the jagged rocks, his pulse thundered in his ears. The chaos of the storm mirrored the storm within him. Years of emotional restraint, fear of vulnerability, and a deep-seated instinct to protect had all converged into this moment. Olivia clung to him, shock and fear giving way to trust born in an instant, and for the first time, she saw the depth of his courage, not just physical but emotional. When they finally scrambled to the safety of the cliff, soaked, shivering, and adrenaline-fueled, the storm outside mirrored the torrent of emotions raging within them. Words were unnecessary at first. Their shared gasp for breath, trembling limbs, and the raw, unguarded way they clung to each other conveyed more than speech ever could. Yet in that tension-filled pause, the unspoken truths they had both been avoiding began to surface, threatening to disrupt the fragile equilibrium of trust they had slowly built. As the storm subsided into a heavy drizzle, Olivia's eyes narrowed, the adrenaline fading to clarity. She recalled an earlier conversation, a personal detail Ethan had shared, something she later discovered was untrue, a protective facade he had constructed to shield himself from intimacy. The revelation hit her like a physical blow. Trust, even in its nascent form, had been compromised. Confrontation was immediate. "Why didn't you tell me the truth?" she demanded, her voice trembling between hurt and anger. Ethan's jaw tightened, vulnerability breaking through his usual sarcasm. "Because I was afraid," he admitted, voice low, raw with emotion. Afraid of losing control. Afraid of being exposed. Their confrontation spiraled into an emotional explosion, a collision of fears and insecurities. Olivia's dread of heartbreak, Ethan's terror of emotional vulnerability, both laid bare against the backdrop of the storm-lashed cliffs. In that charged moment, pretense fell away entirely. Words turned into confessions, confessions into tremulous laughter, apologies and hesitant admissions of longing. The tension that had been simmering for weeks erupted into raw, palpable emotion. Ethan admitted how deeply he was drawn to her. Olivia revealed how her heart had slowly shifted from guarded curiosity to real affection. In the aftermath, soaked and trembling but unbroken, they finally acknowledged what had been unspoken, a mutual attraction tempered by fear, yet undeniable, a spark ignited into a blaze of emotional connection that promised change, growth, and the precarious thrill of love tested by circumstance by the time the coastal town's sun cast golden hues over the rugged cliffs. Olivia Harper had emerged transformed, her journey both literal and emotional culminating in a profound sense of empowerment. The travel story she had come to write no longer felt like a mere assignment. It became a reflection of her own evolution, capturing not only the scenic landscapes and vibrant local culture, but also the subtler, human moments she had come to appreciate through the lens of her experiences. Each paragraph she wrote, each photograph she curated, carried an authenticity that mirrored the emotional clarity she had achieved. Olivia no longer wrote from a place of detachment or professional obligation alone. Her words now resonated with empathy, depth, and a quiet confidence born from overcoming personal heartbreak and embracing vulnerability. The meticulous independence she had cultivated throughout her life, once armor against disappointment, was now a source of pride rather than protection. She moved through the town with poise and self-assurance, engaging with locals, navigating the train schedules, and capturing fleeting moments of beauty with a keen eye and open heart. The scars from her past, the failed engagement, the betrayal, the long-standing mistrust, were no longer chains restricting her. They were lessons that had fortified her, giving her insight into resilience, trust, and self-worth. In this phase of her journey, Olivia discovered that empowerment wasn't about invulnerability or perfection. It was about acknowledging fear, embracing curiosity, and allowing herself to take risks both professionally and personally, a realization that would underpin not only her story, but her evolving relationship with Ethan. Ethan Cole, too, found clarity in the aftermath of the storm and the emotional turbulence that had followed. From afar, he deftly managed a looming professional crisis, coordinating with colleagues and clients while on vacation, a testament to the discipline that had defined his career. Yet, unlike before, this crisis no longer dictated the rhythm of his personal life. He realized that prioritizing professional perfection at the expense of emotional fulfillment had left him isolated, hardened, and reluctant to take risks in matters of the heart. His time with Olivia, fraught with tension, laughter, arguments, and raw confessions, forced him to confront the reality that happiness required presence, attentiveness, and vulnerability. For the first time, he recognized that personal relationships were not obstacles to success, but integral components of a balanced, meaningful life. Each shared meal, Each quiet conversation during the coastal sunsets became a lesson in emotional courage. By the end of the journey, Ethan had adopted a new perspective. He could honor his professional responsibilities without allowing them to overshadow his capacity for love, trust, and connection. The storm had stripped away more than pretense. It had revealed priorities, teaching him that safeguarding the heart was important, but so was allowing it to be touched, challenged, and ultimately cherished. This realization became a cornerstone of his personal growth, aligning seamlessly with the narrative of empowerment Olivia had begun for herself. In the final days of their shared journey, Olivia and Ethan embraced a rhythm of genuine connection, unencumbered by past fears or the defenses they had once maintained. Their interactions flowed from shared laughter over quirky local encounters to quiet moments of intimacy as they watched the sun dip into the horizon, hands brushing, eyes lingering in mutual acknowledgement of feelings long suppressed. Vulnerabilities were no longer sources of tension, but bridges. Olivia spoke openly about her lingering insecurities, while Ethan admitted the habitual guard he had maintained for years. Together, they discovered a delicate balance between closeness and individuality, recognizing that love need not erode self-identity. The culmination of their emotional journey was a mutual understanding that taking a chance on each other did not signify weakness, but courage, a conscious decision to embrace connection without surrendering independence. As they explored the final vistas of the coastal town, laughter interwoven with tender glances, they were no longer two guarded souls cautiously orbiting each other. They were partners in both adventure and life, equally invested and mutually empowered. The journey's conclusion symbolized more than romantic fulfillment. It represented a triumph of emotional growth, self-awareness, and the willingness to risk vulnerability for the possibility of profound, shared happiness, a narrative closure that left both characters stronger, wiser, and intimately connected without compromise. The airport terminal hummed with routine bustle, rolling suitcases, distant announcements, and hurried footsteps echoing off polished floors. But Olivia and Ethan existed, in a quiet bubble of intimacy amid the chaos. The sun cast warm streaks through the expansive windows, illuminating the tangle of travelers while also highlighting the subtle tension in their farewell. There was no dramatic proclamation, no grandiose gesture. Instead, their goodbye was understated, loaded with unspoken emotion. Olivia's carry-on rested lightly against her side as she stepped toward the gate, her voice catching slightly but steady. "This isn't goodbye. Just see you soon," she murmured, the words carrying both hope and the weight of everything they had shared. Ethan's jaw tightened briefly, his usual stoic mask faltering as he absorbed the sincerity in her tone. His reply was calm, deceptively simple, yet profound. "I'll be waiting." There was no rush to fill the silence with platitudes. The few words exchanged resonated more deeply than any elaborate declaration could have. Around them, travelers moved in practiced routines, oblivious to the quiet, emotional crescendo unfolding nearby. Their shared experiences, the train journey, the storm, the confessions, and laughter, coalesced into a palpable undercurrent, threading through their gestures, glances, and brief touch of hands as Olivia adjusted her bag strap. It was in this measured restraint that the emotional weight of the farewell was most potent, capturing a lifetime of trust, vulnerability, and tentative hope in a fleeting, intimate moment before paths temporarily diverged. As Olivia moved toward the boarding gate, she paused momentarily at the large window overlooking the tarmac. The plane's engines hummed with life, a mechanical rhythm contrasting sharply with the emotional pulse she carried within. She sank into her seat near the window, the tray still folded, the seatbelt clicking into place. As the aircraft slowly taxied to the runway, a montage of memories flooded her mind. The first awkward interactions on the train, the forced proximity that had sparked teasing banter, the accidental splashes during sightseeing mishaps, and the storm that had tested their courage and trust. She recalled arguments that had revealed insecurities, shared laughter that had dissolved tension, and confessions that had cracked open long-guarded hearts. Each flashback was vivid. Ethan's steady hand rescuing her from the crashing waves, their soaked laughter dripping in the cliffside rain, the subtle glances exchanged in the cabin when vulnerability surfaced. These memories coalesced not just as narrative beats, but as symbols of growth, connection, and the profound transformation they had both undergone. She traced her finger over the window fog, a gentle smile tugging at her lips, acknowledging both the bittersweet nature of departure and the enduring significance of their journey together. The plane lifted and the landscape below blurred into streaks of color, echoing the emotional continuum of the weeks spent in shared adventure, discovery, and burgeoning love. As the plane ascended, Olivia's smile deepened, tears glimmering at the corners of her eyes but tempered by an undeniable sense of joy and hope. She watched clouds part to reveal the coastal town fading below, each memory a testament to the courage it had taken to trust, to open, and to embrace connection without losing herself. Meanwhile, Ethan lingered at the terminal window, his hands loosely resting against the glass, eyes following the plane's upward trajectory. He inhaled deeply, absorbing both the physical distance and the emotional proximity that had come to define their relationship. A quiet clarity settled over him. Their story was not about fleeting passion or instant resolution, but about measured growth, mutual respect, and the willingness to take the risk of vulnerability. Their hearts, once carefully armored against disappointment, now beat with anticipation and readiness for a slow, enduring romance. There was no need for dramatic gestures. The silent acknowledgement, the meaningful words, and the shared memories were sufficient. In this final moment, both Olivia and Ethan were irrevocably changed, more open, more courageous, and fully present to the possibility of love that could flourish without compromising identity. The plane's ascent mirrored the emotional release within them, a visual metaphor for hope, growth, and the promise that their journey, though temporarily interrupted by distance, had set the foundation for a future rich in trust, intimacy, and lasting connection.